Quasar's card component makes it simple to group content on your site. So something you'll probably end up using all of the time. Let me show you how it works, then we'll do some examples so you can get a feel for how you might use cards in the real world. So let's go ahead and create our page, Quasar new page, components / Q card page, and then we'll go ahead and open that Q card page, grab it from the menu over here, and we can go ahead and get started. Let's start with the most basic of examples by saying Q-card, and we'll put in one of my favorite Australian flowers, which is the wattle. And there we go. It's not very pretty, but that just gives you an example of the bare bones of a Q card. Notice that it's pretty much just a div with a little bit of a shadow to make it stand out. Now, let's do a better example by throwing in a Q card section. So this is the other component that we'll use with cards. Q-card-section. And then we can throw the word wattle in there. And now it's looking a little bit better. So the Q card section adds a little bit of padding and a little bit of other functionality that we'll explore in a moment. And then the other one is the Q card actions. Q-card-actions. And this is where you're going to have things like buttons. So maybe a Q button sitting in there. And let's just give it a label of maybe more. So this is like a find out more button. And then we'll make it flat. And the reason we're making it flat is because if we don't, see how you kind of get this double shadow feeling happening here? It just doesn't look very nice in the eyes. It's not very good to have too many elevated things nested within each other. And so it's often a good idea in an example like this to just use a flat button. I think that looks a lot nicer. And while we're at it, let's add a bit of a width here. How about max width 250 pixels? Because it looks a bit silly if it's stretched all the way to the edge in this example. And there we go. I think that looks good. Now I'm going to show you the entire API for these three components because there's really not that much to it. And then I'll show you some real world examples. First, let's go ahead and make the card dark by throwing in the word dark. Simple as that. Let's make it square. And notice that we've got some curves on the edges here. If we make it square, it just squares that off. The other thing I want to do is make it flat. And that's just like flat with buttons, where it flattens out the card so it loses the elevation there. And then in this example, you might also want to make it bordered. Once again, this is just like Q button, where it adds a border to the outside. You might want to change the color as well. So let's say class is equal to background-light-blue 2. Yeah, so this is good if you have a flat card, because otherwise you pretty much just end up with text, and that's not very useful. So often you might just want to add a background in there just to differentiate it. And the other thing you can do, and this is actually the last piece of the API for QCard, is change the tag. So if we jump in here, notice that it is a div at the moment. We can just say tag and change it to a list item. Not the best example because you end up with this little dot at the top, but that is in fact a list item now. So there we go. That's the QCard API. Let's move on to the QCard section API. But first, I just want to get rid of this blue background and maybe this other stuff as well. Okay, I think that looks good now. Let me just get this out of the way and show you that you can change the tag. So if we come up here, the tag at the moment is set to a div, but I can say tag is equal to li. And there we go. It's changed it to a list item now. Bring that back to normal. And the only other thing we can do here is make it horizontal. And this is really cool. So check this out. If I have a QCard section that's set to horizontal, and then I throw two other QCard sections in there, let's say times 2, so we end up with 2 of them. And then we can say, let's say left here, and then right here. It's going to automatically set that up really nicely for us. So maybe you could say like title here, and then something else. And there we go. Maybe in this example, you'd also say class equals text dash right, and we might have to put a full width on here. Yeah, that might not be exactly how you do it, but just to give you an example, it breaks it up into 2 sections there. We'll explore that a little bit later on in this video. Another thing that we have is the QCard button. So how about we just go back to wattle there. Let's get rid of the horizontal part. Yeah, more basic example. So the cue card section can also be set to vertical, because at the moment everything is showed horizontally. And actually, I should probably show you that. So let's just paste this down. One of them says more. Let's create another one that says pictures and another one that says edit, just as an example. Yeah, so they're shown across the bottom there. However, we can just say vertical, and now they're going to be stacked. And that can look really nice in some situations, especially with more narrow cards. Oh, and of course, you might want to set this to an icon. Yeah, so you can kind of mix and match there to make it look how you like it. And one last thing, we can also change this back from vertical, and we have the option align. We can align that to the right. We can put it all in the center. We can say around. And to show these examples, it's probably better I make it a little bit wider. So let's say 400 pixels. Yeah, so notice that around gives us a little bit of space on the edges, whereas we've also got between, and that pushes things out to the edges. So that's really good to know as well. And that's cue card actions. That's the entire API. You now know everything that a cue card can do. However, the power of a cue card is when you start throwing other components in there. So that's what we're going to do now, just to explore what it can do. So let's just start by styling things a little bit differently. We'll go from scratch, cue-card, and let's come up here and set a width again. It's nice to write things from the beginning again, just so it sort of sticks in your head. 300 pixels there. And let's add then a cue card section. And in this section, I'm going to have a div just so I can add a bit of styling. And I want that to have a class that is equal to text-h6. So this is going to be a heading. And we'll set that to gimme some lorem. There we go. And then another thing that you'll do all the time is have subheadings. So let's just paste that down. And you can easily do that by saying text-subtitle. And then you can add some numbers here. Let's set it to 2. And I'm going to say here a tale by Luke Diebold. There we go. And you could say subtitle 3, for example, and just play around with that. I'm going to change that back to 2. And so you'll see this all the time. Title, subtitle, and then a little bit of text underneath. But usually you want a separator before that text. So let's say cue-separator. Actually, I'll make that a self-closing tag because this is a very basic component. And let's set it to inset. Okay, so that's shown up, but we can't see it yet. So let's say cue card section, and I'm just going to throw some lorem ipsum in there. Save that. Yeah, there we go. And notice that I put the word inset on the separator there. That adds a little bit of an inset. If I get rid of that, it covers the entire section. So whatever you personally prefer there. That's a really basic example of a card component, an example that you might actually end up seeing around the web quite often and that you can use yourself. Let's expand on this a little bit. So the next thing I want to do is have like a menu in the top right here. So how am I going to do that? Well, what we could do is we could put a div in there, and let's make that a row, and let's say no dash wrap, because I don't want the text within this to wrap around. So I want to strictly make sure that the button shows up on the right there. And I'll throw this inside of that div. Okay, so that's a start. Next, I want to keep all of this together, so I'll put it in its own div. And that div is going to be a column. Okay, so we're pretty much back to normal. But what I can do now is add something else in here. And that could be, for example, a button. So Q-button. And let's just give it a label. Actually, no, I don't want this to have a label. I want it to have an icon. And we'll set the icon to more_vert. A lot of this is being inspired by the doc, so go and check that out if you want. We can also say round and make it flat, just to change the styling a bit. Yeah, so this is just kind of like a little settings button that you can add into the top right. That's a really cool pattern. And another thing I saw in the docs is where they actually turn this into a menu. So let's go ahead and do that because I think it's something that you'll end up using quite often. So we'll come down here. And what we can do is we can actually say Q-menu. And that's going to attach to this button so that when we click it, the menu component is automatically going to open. I think this is really nice. Quasar did an awesome job on this. the team at Quasar. Q dash item dash section. Oh, we have to have an item first. And how about we have 3 items? And I just want a really basic example here. So how about 1, and then we'll say here 2, and then 3. Yep, there we go. And we'll make all of them clickable just to show you what's possible. There we go. So that's a pattern that you might use often. And usually these items would, usually this would all be wrapped in a Q item section. In fact, let's do this properly. Q dash item dash section for all of them. Q dash item dash section. By the way, if you're using Visual Studio Code, the way I'm wrapping this really quickly is selecting what I want wrapped and then saying Control Shift Enter. And then I can say Q dash item dash section, and it's automatically going to wrap it inside of that tag for me. And there we go. We've got our menu. And then you can imagine you might also have some buttons down the bottom here. So let's go ahead and add another section, Q card section. And within that, I'm going to have some buttons. Q dash button. And how about we have 2 of them? And we'll just call that action. And this is another action. There we go. And we probably want to add some better styling there. Oh, I forgot the word N. So how about this? Q dash button. And we'll add a label here of equal to action. I've already showed you this, so I won't spend too long here. And just paste that down. Okay, I think that's a really nice example. Oh, and the reason they're overly padded there is because that should actually say actions. Q card actions. And refresh this. Yeah, and that's just going to set the styling a little bit better. And in this example, I'd probably use a separator. So maybe Q dash separator. And there we go. Nice. I think that's a really cool example. Let's move on to adding images in. And first we need to find one. And I found this really cool image the other day. It was like this blue-orange thing. So blue-orange. And let's go ahead and go to images. Yeah, there we go. How cool is that? So now I can right-click on this and say copy image address. And then if we want to add this to the top, we can add it above the Q card section. So we can literally just say image, and let's set the source equal to that. And there we go. This is like getting a little bit intense now. So let's simplify things a little bit. Let's get rid of this section here and have a play around with images. So I'll get rid of that. And maybe we'll get rid of the actions for now as well. And let's have a play around with images. We can make it an image on its own. So if I just comment this out, it's simply a card with an image, which looks really nice. I like having that little shadow on the side there. So if you have like a whole bunch of images that you're showing, you might want to show it in a card just to add that extra styling in. We could also add a Q item above it. So Q dash item, Q dash item dash section. And then this could be an avatar, Q dash avatar, and then I'll just throw a letter in there. So for example, let's set the background here to primary. Oh, what have I done here? Class equals background primary. There we go. Probably set the text to white. And then let's have another section for some text. Q item section, Q item label. And I want to have 2 of those labels because one of them is going to be a caption. So we could say, for example, here, Luke Diebold, which is my name. And then the caption could be, actually, let's make the caption my name and then author up here. Yeah, so just a quick design tip here. We'll put the word caption in. And I think that looks really, really nice. So let's have a look at what else we can do. We can use a Quasar Q image, which gives us a little bit more flexibility. And that's so easy to do. We just add a Q dash in there. And now check this out. I reckon this is really awesome. If I come down here, close this tag off, and then let's put a div in there. We can put in a title for this image. So like my title, let's give it something more descriptive. Awesome orange. Notice that it adds this really nice title in there. And then if you want, you can add some classes like absolute bottom, and that's just going to whack it onto the bottom. And then, of course, you've got stuff like absolute top as well. Let me just fix one of the errors that I've got here by getting rid of that. Yeah, now we could also turn this image into a parallax, and I didn't even know about this till recently. It's really cool. So Q-parallax, hopefully I've spelt that correctly. And then you set the source, and you also give it a height as well. Maybe 150 as an example. And we're going to have to add a margin so that we can actually scroll here. Let's put the T in there. Yeah, so this is not the best example. Obviously, like it's kind of messed things up a little bit here. But if I now add something here, maybe... No, we'll add a style there that adds a massive margin. So margin bottom, and we'll set that to like, I don't know, 4,000. Just so we can see this parallax in action. And there we go. Not the best example of a parallax, but you get the idea. And so that's just a few examples of me playing around with the cue card. I love this component. You can throw whatever you want in there. It's super fun and super helpful. I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed making it for you, and I'll see you in the next one where we explore another component.